So this is where we start talking about analytics. And analytics, here's another ubiquitous term. It means everything and it means nothing until you talk about it a little bit more. So there's a lot of things I'll lump together in this discipline around analytics. And they're listed up there: business intelligence, online analytical processing, data mining, things like that. So it's taking your big data, all this stuff you have, your valuable data, and doing something with it. You know, it's different than traditional reporting. And I'll go through some of the differences, and I'll actually go through a demo and show you guys how it looks and how it works, because it's conceptually, it is a lot different than what you're used to doing in terms of reporting. But it gives you the ability to interact with your data. So instead of printing a report and you get a piece of paper and it comes out and you're looking at it and you say, this is great, but I got a question on this. You have to go back, build the report, rerun it, then you get the report and you look at it. And if everybody here has got a boss, right? And everybody's boss asks a lot of questions, right? Some people feel important by asking questions. Some people really want to know the answer. But either way, you get a lot of questions, right? You get a lot of things that I want to know about this, what about that? Well, that back and forth and that repetitive print report, it's not effective. It's not conducive. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of energy. So if you had a way that you could interact with your data, right? You can make it self-service. You can interact with it, you can ask questions. If you can do those kinds of things, you're getting more out of your big data, your valuable data. It is a top priority for CIOs, and it has been for years. And I tell you what, I've been doing this for 20 years. I actually worked with Gary probably 20 years ago at Great Plains Software when I first came into the business. And of all the things I've seen from doing customer service at Great Plains Software to what I do today, this is probably, I think, without a doubt, some of the most valuable technology you can use in your business. I think mobility is up there as well, but you have to be able to use mobile devices properly to get something out of it. But if you get an analytics system in your house, in-house, it's your business, and it's set up well, and you've done some training on it, and you're using it, the changes you can drive are immense. They're amazing. We recently, and I'll go through examples here a little bit later, we recently rolled it out for a food manufacturer in North Fargo. And with a simple, I think this is a lot of money, but I'm going to tell you, with less than a $15,000 investment, which I think $15,000 is a lot of money, but he calls it a game changer. This is the most important thing they've done in several years in terms of their business. And I'll talk about specifics around that. But so in the last 20 years, analytics, and I've been doing it for probably 10 years, different customers, it's fantastic. And I'll show you what it looks like here in a little bit. Any questions so far? I can actually see the room, like Ben had mentioned. Last year, you could not see anything in front of you, so I can see the room if you had questions. But how does it work? This is a complicated diagram, right? So this is for the techie people out there. So if you're a non-technical person, you can kind of gloss over, and I'll wake you up here in 2 minutes as I go through this. But there are a lot of technologies involved, and I'm going to talk on the Microsoft stack, simply because I'm familiar with it. There are other ways to get business intelligence and analytics running in your business. But the idea behind it is you can have multiple sources. So you look on the left side of the slide here, Oracle databases, Access databases, even Excel tables, things like that, where you can grab these and pull them through an ETL process, extract, transfer, load. You grab all these pieces together, you establish them in a data warehouse, this middle SQL Server DW that you see there, bring them into one spot, so you're simplifying it. You're tying it together, you are focusing what you want to report on, and you're putting it in a data warehouse, so you're not accessing the transaction databases anymore. You're putting it in a data warehouse, and the beauty comes into it at that next step where you see the cubes. And this is the difference. This is the power. This is how analytics is different than traditional reporting, is that it's based on a cube technology. And I'll show you what that looks like, and we'll go through an example of it here in a bit. Some of the technologies, the ETL piece, SQL Server Integration Services, you may already have it. SQL Server, obviously, right there in the data warehouse. The cubes, analysis services from Microsoft. That's what we're most familiar with anyways, at Network Center. So, any questions on this? Okay, so non-technical people, time to wake up. Okay, here we go. This is what it looks like. So, unlike a table that has rows and columns and millions of records, and you scan through it, and you use the indexes, and you find what you're looking for, cubes are different. They take the data and store it in a multidimensional function, and it is like a cube, okay? So, because I'll use the example here in the lower right corner, if you guys can see that, where the number is, and I'm 43, so my vision isn't great, 580, and you'll see the measure of packages in the lower left corner, so that 580 represents the number of packages that this fictitious business has shipped. You can see that 580, that's the value, that's the number of packages that have been shipped, whether you look at it in terms of the source, where it come from, what hemisphere, or you look at the route it took in terms of non-ground air. So instead of scanning through the tables and pulling all this information every time you want to find out the number 580 just because you're looking from a different perspective, it's the same number and it already pre-aggregates it for you. It knows the relationship of your data. It knows how you want to look at it, and it builds the number for you. So it's faster. Questions on this? So some of the benefits, I've kind of referenced them here a little bit. Multi-source. So you can take multiple sources, Excel, Access, Oracle, another SQL databases, multiple SQL databases, pull them together. Self-service. This is the power of it. Met with a business this spring and we started talking about their pivot tables. And so, well, I just build these reports. It works just fine for me. And then I send it out to these 5, 6 people, and then they ask me some questions on it, and I build another pivot table, and I send it out to them. I said, man alive, let them do it, right? They already know what they're looking for. They just want the information. Self-service is powerful. Get it off your desk. Don't sit and build reports for half of your day. Build a tool, give it to them, teach them how to use it, and walk away from it. You're driving intelligence from one person to everybody. It's fast because of pre-aggregation. I mentioned that example of 580 packages. It pre-aggregates the data. It's as real time as you want it to get. If we go back up, and I don't know if I hit the red button, if I'll go up 2 slides, but I'm not going to try it because I'll probably end up crashing the whole thing. But if you remember the way it was laid out, coming from your sources to the data warehouse to the cubes, you can specify how frequently this updates. The business up in North Fargo, they do it just once a day, which is just fine for them. You may want to do it 3 times a day. You might want to do it twice on Friday because you've got a board meeting that's at noon and you want them to have them as they're using it to have the most recent data. Set up the frequency. Analytical, ask questions. I think this is the most powerful piece, and there's a slide when I get to the end of this analytics discussion that kind of lays out how this works. The folks that are in leadership positions and are making good decisions for the business are analytical. They ask questions. They want to know more. And if you can give them this technology, you can give them the power of the tool, and you can let them do this, they can answer their own questions, right? And that's when you get the multiplier effect in terms of multiple people using it, multiple questions getting answered. And you're not hitting your transaction databases as frequently, depending on how often you sync. So rather than a reporting solution that goes right to the single database and it bogs things down and, oh, you know what, don't run that report because I got to do invoicing today. You don't have to worry about that stuff. It takes it offline. Questions on this? Let's run through a little demo here. I want to show you just how it works. And knock on wood, the connection here is pretty good and I get logged in. This is the part where we stand here and just kind of wait for it to wake up. All right. Excel. You can use multiple front ends for an analytics solution. Excel is just easy because people in this room have seen Excel. You use Excel. You know how Excel works. This is similar to pivot tables. Who here has used pivot tables before? Probably a lot of people have used pivot tables. The difference between this is, instead of loading all your data up into your Excel sheet and having a 2 gig file that you're emailing around, this is just going to be a live connection to my analytics database. Okay? So the data is actually hosted in Parsec, in Billings, in a data center, and I'm using the Wi-Fi here in the building. So if the Wi-Fi is slow and frumpy, we'll have to wait for Midco to get gigabit to the building here, but next year it should be fantastic. But I think it's pretty good. So bear with me here. I'm going to establish a connection to my data. It's going to hiccup the first time when it goes through some security checks. Data. Hold on a second here. Here we go. All right, everybody cross your fingers. Otherwise, this presentation ends in about 30 seconds. That might not be a bad thing, so say nobody crossed their fingers. Here we go. So I got pivot table fields on the right, live connection to my data, hosted at Parsec. This is the sample company that comes with analysis services from Microsoft. This is a company that sells bicycles and bicycle accessories, gloves, helmets, road bikes, mountain bikes, things like that. And The beauty of it is how easy it is to work with, right? So if I want to, and this business actually is, they sell two different ways. They sell over the internet, and they sell through a reseller or a distribution channel. So we can take a look at statistics or numbers from those two perspectives over a particular time for particular products or categories. Not unlike a lot of the businesses here in the room. So let's go through an example here. If I wanted to know, for instance, what my internet sales amount has been, grab it, pull it into a value. Here we go, $29 million is the pre-aggregated number in terms of sales I've done for this business here. Obviously, this number of itself doesn't have a lot of value. Now we start getting analytical, right? We start asking a lot of questions. Let's say I want to know this by product category. Kind of search through here a little bit. In my rows, I want to see my product categories. I can see my accessories, my bikes, my clothing. I can see in terms of gloves, how much I've sold. I can see them whether they're size, small, medium, large, etc. Again, interaction with the data, real-time connection, using Excel as a front end. This is great, but this tells me what I've sold sort of throughout time. Let's add a date dimension to it. So I want to measure my sales, but I want to use some date information. Let me see if I can find date. Now I can see by calendar year what I've done in terms of sales. Now, there are hierarchies built in some of these dimensions, these things I'm looking at, these aspects that I can expand on. You'll see I've got calendar year 2008. That actually goes down into half year, and then into month, and then I think it goes down maybe into week and then days after that. So it gives you a little perspective on how the data gets structured. So if you've got data and you've got multiple systems and you've got a lot of it, there's value to it. And building an analysis solution, an analytics solution, gives you the power to go and look at some of this stuff and make it self-service. Give it to the masses. Let multiple people use it and access it. So this is fantastic. This gives me a little breakdown. I'll show you here how I can click on calendar year 2008. Break it down a little bit further, et cetera, et cetera. I could set up a filter, I could do reporting, graphs, charts, et cetera. But let's say I want to look at something a little bit different. Let's start over here, and I want to see, I think I got product model lines in here. For my particular model lines, I really kind of want to see what my road bikes are selling, the Road 150s right here. And I want to see my profit margin. Again, one of the things I'm measuring. Let's see if I can find that measure. If you guys see it and I miss it, give me well, there's internet profit margin. We'll go with this one. Throw that in. I can see my profit margin. Let's get away from the internet one. I think there's a different total gross profit margin. There I can see my profit margin for my bikes all time. Again, this doesn't necessarily give us some date information, so let's go ahead and, actually let's throw in some revenue stuff too. Let's see what we can find in terms of value around revenue. Well, let's do sales amount too. We'll throw that in as another value. There's our sales amount, profit margin. Let's grab some dates. I'm going to set it up as a filter because I just want to see a particular date. Let's just see what's going on in 2008. So you get the idea, not unlike a pivot table, right? The difference is being it's pre-aggregated, it's a lot faster. You don't have to email out a spreadsheet with all the data from the pivot table in it. You could send out this template, and when another user opens it up, it does the connection, checks their security, pulls in the most recent data, and it's easier to share these files. It's a starting point, but if you've got folks that are analytical, that ask a lot of questions, need a lot of reports, want a lot of information, analytics solution is fantastic for them because it gives them that power, gives them the ability to make decisions around it. Any questions on this? And hopefully you don't ask me any questions around the particular data because it's the sample data. I'm not super familiar with it. Yeah?
Does the Excel web application have the ability to do all that, or does it have to be on machine?
So the question was, does the Excel web have the functionality to do this and support this, or do you have to have a desktop version? Correct? So you're talking Office 365?
Well, I'm using the Office web apps within SharePoint.
I have not tried it. I would bet it does, though. This is a big play for Microsoft. I would be surprised if if it doesn't support it. And as a matter of fact, if you have a laptop or you want to sign in when I'm in the back of the room, we can connect via your Excel cloud-based SharePoint integration web app piece to this data set. We'll log in and give it a test. I think it'll probably work. That'd be my guess. So good question. Other questions? Okay, let's run back to the PowerPoint slide here. We'll put a wrap on it. So we've talked big data, right? We've talked big data. We've talked analytics. Some examples. Clay County. This was actually in the paper. This was probably 7-10 years ago, built a solution for Clay County. They have such a complicated budgeting system, and they have a complex accounting system with expensive licensing, and they wanted to be able to give access to financial information to department heads. Makes sense, right? Why wouldn't a department head know what they've got in terms of budget and what they have in terms of spending to date, and where does it all fall in the categories? So built a analytics solution, pulled information out of a legacy IBM DB2 system, put it into SQL Server, built the hierarchies, sent it out to the department heads, loved it, worked fantastic. Farm Credit Services, insurance, crops, land, losses, premiums, insurance agents, all those things. Built a pretty complicated, pretty slick, pretty nice system for them as well. Called it the game changer. And then the last one, I kind of referenced it, was Drayton Foods. Here's the uniqueness about Drayton Foods as a manufacturer. They provide, I'll oversimplify this, but they make food products for the restaurants you eat at. The complexity with their business is not that they've got product and ingredients and they've got labor. That's the easy piece. The complexity they've got is they have a parent-child relationship with the people that buy their products. Anybody heard of Darden Restaurants? Darden Restaurants owns Olive Garden, Red Lobster, possibly some other ones. So when Olive Garden wants breadsticks at a particular restaurant in Fargo, the purchases come through corporate in Florida. The ship to is Fargo. The invoice goes to Florida. And then so you've got that odd dynamic in terms of, well, you can see what your sales amount were by invoice, but you can't see necessarily unless you get in the details around the ship to stuff, who actually got it, which restaurants are buying more or less of it. But they've also got shipping that goes with it. Is it freight on board shipping? What's the shipping cost? Do you get shipping breaks because you've shipped a lot with this particular transport company? And then they also do a rebate system. So if a particular store has been buying a lot of something, they get money back at the end of the year. So you figure all these pieces of data, try to get that out of the accounting system, they couldn't. Matter of fact, when we built the solution for them, we took all these aspects in, and we had to build a separate table, kind of a lookup table, a reference table, to tie these pieces together with the data from the accounting system. We probably spent, and Joe's here because he took all the calls, we probably spent 2 weeks answering questions of, yep, that's the right data. Are you sure this is the cost on this? Yeah, that's the cost on it. This is our gross profit for this piece, for this period? Yeah, that's it. Let's run it out. Let me show you how it looks in the accounting system. It was amazing, of an eye-opener. They weren't that far off, but the specifics and the details, you tick the needle 1%, it's a lot of money. And that's what they're seeing for a solution in their example that was, I think, less than $15,000, including some of the support and follow-up. But it was a game changer, and there was an enormous amount of surprise around how good the data was and the value they've got from it. So, good stuff. I referenced this earlier about managers asking questions. And this is an interesting slide that I got from Microsoft probably 10, 15 years ago. And it talks a little bit about how the number of decisions decrease as you move operationally to the right, and also the strategic value of those decisions as you move to the right. I think this actually should be flipped, is a little bit less. But as you move up the organization and the number of decisions become more important through the executive level, that's where analytics really plays well. Now, you can still use analytics for the operational side, for embedded information, 24/7 BI, the things you see on the far right. But the value comes when you empower managers, leaders, directors, presidents, folks at your company with more information that they can look at it and say, this is what I'm seeing in the business, and this is where I think we need to make some changes. Questions on big data, valuable data, new term, analytics. I went through it pretty quick. I've given this presentation, and it's been up to an hour and a half long, just going through some details, but you'll gloss over after too much of it. So any questions on it? So here's the cool thing about this. Drayton Foods, the example that I built out here with the sample database, Parsec data servers, out in Billings, charges per month for licensing. It's actually pretty attractive. I think, don't quote me, it's a couple $100 a month for what Drayton's paying for it, which is pretty inexpensive. You think of the value of it. So Rick's going to come up, and we're going to talk cloud, but this is cloud, right? This is Dakota Fiber Initiative. This is access to servers. This is access to information. This is not necessarily having to put it on site. They've got salespeople all over the place. Why do you need to have it located in Fargo? You can have it located anywhere. And the systems they've got built out there, we'll talk about it here when Rick joins me. Come on up, Rick. When we talk about cloud and things like that, the systems they have out there just make sense. It's kind of a no-brainer to put things out there. So it works really well for them. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Check.
Check.
Mic check. Rick's a music guy too, so he'll probably do some sort of music mic check, something for us later. But any questions on big data analytics? Like I mentioned, this is in the cloud. This stuff is hosted elsewhere. The internet connection we've got here that everybody else is on, it works just fine, and it works fantastic, and it's an off-site. So, other questions? Awesome.